My husband has been a park ranger for years now, and he's got a handful of scary things that have happened to him over his time just trying to maintain the park and do his job. One that always gets to him is when he was working on a segment of trail, fixing it. I don't recall precisely what he was doing, but he saw a rare sight that you pretty much never see in nature. A pack of wolves. Now, off in the distance, there was a large meadow. At the end of this meadow was a steep hill, littered with sparsely placed fir and oak trees. The wolves, an entire pack of them, were running at high speeds down this hill, then across the meadow. As my husband watched this happen in front of him, he saw that these wolves weren't just running to a destination in mind. They were clearly spooked. Spooked by something. The entire pack, mind you. That's when they were crossing the meadow, and a loud guttural scream came roaring far from the distance from the direction that they had just come from. Few of the wolves in front of the pack nervously turned their heads to look behind them in the course of the screaming. The scream lasted for a whopping 12 to 14 seconds, my husband had told me. Whatever made the screaming had to have a massive set of lungs. There's nothing out there in the woods that makes that kind of noise. Not to his knowledge. My husband also has extensive wilderness survival training and knows just about every animal that you can run into out there. He's never heard anything like that scream in his entire life. It scared him more than it scared the wolves that were running from it. I used to work in the Forest Service. I worked as a park ranger for many years and have my fair share of creepy tales and stories. In fact, I could honestly write a book about all my happenings during my time as a ranger, but I will leave you with just this one. My story took place in Yellowstone many years ago. I will not reveal the exact location because the park is so large, but people in that area have reported at the time strange noises and seeing large shadows moving around. As a park ranger, you have to learn to deflect information with what is real and what is not true. Lots of people see things because they get paranoid when they are outside of their element. It is a natural human occurrence. We had been warning people that the area might not be safe, but there was a couple that decided to not only camp in that area, but camp so far back beyond the trail where they were not allowed. Their tent and belongings were discovered only a few days later, off trail, by hikers. The disturbing part of the story was that they were missing. Their tent and all of their belongings were scattered, bloody, and torn up. It clearly looked like their campsite had been ravaged. It could have possibly been a mountain lion attack, or even a bear. About a quarter mile away from the campsite, we found something. Further away from the trail, we found an unknown and unidentified pile of scat. We weren't able to pinpoint it to a specific animal in the area, but it resembled that of huge dog poop. It did not resemble bear scat or mountain lion scat in any way. Samples were obtained and taken in for analysis. When the tests came back, there were no signs of any human remains in the scat. However, various other remains of animals were in this scat, like small pieces of bone, tissue, etc. Whatever poop it was, it clearly came from a carnivorous animal. If it was waste that came from a wolf, mind you, it was the most considerable wolf droppings I've ever seen in my life. Because this case involved 2 missing persons, the police had to be called in and an actual investigation followed after. The result of the investigation was that the couple were never found, even through extensive searching of the area for days afterward. I think this couple even made it into one of David Paulides' books, Missing 411, though I'm not too sure. This kind of thing happens far more than you would ever believe. To my knowledge, no bodies were ever recovered. Park ranger here had a terrifying experience back in the fall of 2016 when the whole clown craze was going on. Let me explain. Back in early October, I was scheduled to work on a night shift. From my lookout point, I could see what appeared to be fire from a short distance away. When I went to go investigate, and I could get closer, it appeared that it was actually looking like a congregation of people holding torches. What in the hell? Why would there be people out here in the middle of the night? At least 50 of them holding torches in a semicircle. Now, the first thing that came to my mind is some kind of satanic ritual circle. That within itself is far above my pay grade, and I wasn't about to go and try and interrupt that. But I got a better look at the situation, and to my horror, it was some sort of ritual. What I was looking at was about 60 to 70 people dressed up in clown costumes. I'm talking full makeup and everything. Each one of them holding a torch, standing in a loose circle. They weren't talking or doing anything. I don't recall them making any noise whatsoever, just staring off into space or staring off blankly at each other. I ran back to my post immediately and called my boss and told him what was going on. He told me to not hesitate to phone the police if I considered anything to get out of hand. I quickly kept a look on the situation and saw that they were dividing into what looked like groups of 2 from what I could see and venturing off into the woods, all separately in every which direction, except the direction where my post was at. I don't know if there's some sort of clown ritual or some sort of cult that meets up and dresses like that, but the experience was weird. This was about 1:45 a.m. in the morning and lasted maybe the entirety of a whole 15 minutes before they all dissipated into groups of 2 off in the night wilderness. I have no explanation at all for what I saw that night, nor do I know anything about a clown cult. I'm a former park ranger Forest Service employee. I've spent far too much time out in the forest and have taken away too many awful memories from that career path. I've seen people who have gone out into the woods by themselves and hung themselves. I've seen people who got lost and died of exposure. I've been on search teams where we would go to rescue somebody, and they're not to be found anywhere. The worst is when you encounter missing children, and if you've ever heard or listened to anything about missing children, then you'll know and understand just how awful that is. It's a job that you have to learn to be hardened and put aside your emotions to deal with the task at hand. However, that's in regard to the emotional and traumatic side of things that you deal with on the job. Then, there's an entirely different segment of the job. The segment of the job that puts you in fear and harm's way. It's probably no surprise to you that there are things in the wilderness that we have no idea what or where they came from. I can't sit here and boast to you that I've seen stairs in the middle of the woods. No, nothing like that. No portals, nothing crazy. But that doesn't mean that I haven't spoken with colleagues that have, and have had vivid nightmares about things they've witnessed by themselves. For me, I had never truly felt terror until this specific day, where I was looking for an individual that had been reported last seen on this trail in an area. He had only been missing for a few hours, and I was checking the trail in which he was last seen on. I couldn't help but shake this feeling that something was watching me. At first, I figured it was the lost hiker, and maybe he was trying to get best my attention. I realized quickly that that wasn't the case. This, whatever I was feeling, had an energy to it. A really bad feeling. I could sense it in my stomach. You know how just like when you feel like you're in severe danger, you just have this pit in the bottom of your stomach, like you know something bad is about to take place. That's what I felt. I kept glancing over my shoulder in hopes this lost hiker would step out and show gratitude to me for finding him. Well, that never happened. Instead, I began to see moving shapes around me, hidden behind the trees. Maybe shapes aren't the best terminology to use here. It was more like blurred, opaque figures, if that makes sense. Like something was cloaked. You can't make this stuff up. I was really beginning to freak out. And against my better training and experience out in the woods, I began doing what years and years of training taught me not to do. Panic. I was coming up on a part of the trail where I know I could cut through and get back to the main base area in just a mile. The trail I was on looped around, and had I continued on with the trail, it would have taken me much more time to get back. Because I knew the trail so well and where my location was, I used that to my advantage and cut through the woods to make my way back swiftly. The feeling followed me, and I stopped glancing back over my shoulders to see if these opaque, blurred shapes were following me. Instead, I put my full focus on getting back to base and reporting that I did not find an individual. I safely made it back after hauling it like I had since training and trying to keep up with my superiors. The entire experience was nerve-wracking, and the rest of the day, I just felt so off. Drained of energy, as if I had just ran 12 miles and spent the entire day out in the hot, blazing sun. Let me explain this to you. At the time, I was in top physical prime condition. Naturally, I was a machine and walked 20,000 plus steps a day. I kept in great shape, and it took a lot for me to feel as drained as I did. I've not had a day on the job where I felt like this, or remotely close. A measly 2.5 mile stroll on a trail like that wasn't going to do that to me. I remember feeling severely dehydrated too. Like whatever was following me zapped me of my energy and hydration. I know fear can do a lot of things to you, but that seemed to be an overkill, drastically. I don't know what things I saw in the woods stalking me, but I felt nothing but bad energy radiating off of these things. I felt like I was a deer being hunted, and that if I stopped for more than a minute, I was done for. I've told several of my colleagues about the same story, and to my horror, they have similar stories with very similar beings, as they call them. Maybe I'll share some of them with you sometime when I get more time to sit down and write it all out. Thanks.